Video number 3, Third Reich, Naval Operations. Naval units start off as denominations of 9, and they can be broken down as a result of combat into lower denominations. But the principle, unlike air units, is you must have them in as large denominations as possible, given the available countermix. Circular cities are function as ports. A maximum of 4 9 units or equivalents, a total of 36 factors, can be based out of port. Now, the principle in Third Reich is you can't just go to a port and attack a fleet in port. Ports are invulnerable to naval attack. The ships are relatively significantly weaker than ground-based defenses. Now, in this particular scenario, the Germans want to invade Norway, and they've paid an offensive option. So you've got 2 German 9-unit naval units, which is the largest denomination. And accompanying them are 2 ground units. Here you've got Norway. There is a 1-3 unit on a beach in Bergen and a 1-3 unit on Norway next to a beach. You can see the red line, which makes a difference between the western and the eastern front. So to conduct an offensive operation, Germany would have had to pay twice. Here you've got the British fleet deployed at Roseth, and there are 3 fleets. So an important element here is that these ships within their front have unlimited movement to a location. Now, a ship can carry, on a ratio of 3 to 1, units for amphibious operations. So it would take a 9-fleet ship to carry a 3 denomination ground unit for an amphibious operation. If, say, this German fleet was carrying this German unit to Wilhelmshaven, then the ratio would be 2 to 1. So this fleet could carry a strength 4 unit for transport purposes. Also, a fleet may join in an amphibious operation and contribute 1/3 of its strength as bombardment. So a 9 unit could add 3 bombardment to an amphibious landing on a beachhead. And landing can only be made along these sort of beach territories. Now, Germany wants to capture Norway, and to do that, it's got to capture Oslo, but it also wants to capture Bergen to keep the English from intervening. And so we have one operation here, leaving Rostock, which proceeds up to Norway and conducts a beach landing. Fairly uncomplicated, and then later there'll be a ground attack from the beach to Oslo. Now, because there were no Norwegian units on the beach, the unit in Oslo is doubled, and so this would be a 1-to-1 attack, which would be a fairly dangerous type of attack. Now, our second operation is this fleet proceeding. We're going to assume that this unit is carried by the fleet from Kiel to Bergen, and it's going to sort of trace a line of hexes along here. Now, when it gets to this location, just next to Bergen, it's at its closest point to the British fleet, as it might have actually applied to over here as well. It's within 6 hexes, and here we refer to the interception table. Okay, the interception table indicates the distance from the base of the interceptor and the roll that must be done to do the interception. The German fleet is 6 hexes from the British at Roseth, so there is an 84% chance approximately that the British will intercept. So we're going to assume that an interception has been made successfully. So these 3 British units are now intercepting and attacking the German unit. To resolve the combat, we need to refer to the naval advantage chart, which is here. And it gives us it gives us a ratio modifier, as well as a naval nationality die roll modifier, where you see the Germans have a +2 and the British have a +1. Now, to resolve the combat, both players will roll a die 6, and we're going to assume that both the Germans and the English roll an average of 3. And first we'll modify it by the ratio. Now, the British have a 3-to-1 ratio. There are 3 British fleets against 1 German fleet. That gives a +4 modifier. The British have a +1 modifier for their nationality. The Germans have a +2 modifier for their nationality, which gives us a net difference of 8 for the British, 5 for the Germans, with a net difference of 3. Now we multiply that value by the number of fleets. There are, in this instance, 3 British fleets, and so that minus 3 becomes a 9. Minus 3 times 3 fleets is equal to a 9, and so the Germans would then have to lose their entire fleet, and the British would lose that number rounded down. Now, obviously, the German fleet would sink, and the unit that it was carrying would be eliminated, and the British would then have to reduce one of their 9 fleets down to a 5, made up of different denominations. Now, there is an additional option for the German, which is called breaking off. Since the interception has been successful, the Germans can break off, and by breaking off, the combat is resolved just as we did, and the Germans can never lose more than half of their total force, so they cannot lose more than 4. But the way that the result is calculated, we calculated a loss of 9. We divide that by 2, rounding down, which rounds down to a 4. And so what will happen is that the German fleet will have to suffer 4 losses, which will reduce it to a fleet of 5. The British will suffer 2 losses, which will result one of the 9 ships being reduced to 7, and then the German ship has to go back to the port of departure. Now, it can no longer carry this German army unit, and so that German unit is eliminated, and the ship returns back to Kiel without having succeeded in its operation, and then the British return to the Roswitha, and the ships are inverted to remind us that they conduct no further operations.